record. Welcome to another podcast here of the CXO Underground, and I've got a good friend and co-host here, Joe Topinka today. Hey, Joe, how's everything going?
Fantastic, Mike. I'm really excited about today's podcast. I know we'll get in a moment. We'll be able to introduce our guest today, but somebody I've known for more than a decade now. But how's life been going in quarantine?
It's been good. It's been good. Finally got my son into lacrosse, so they kind of got practices going there. Limited amount of people in the field coaching, but it's nice to get the family outside doing some physical activities since school ended officially last week. And life's been good. Summer has officially started, and we're ready to roll. How about yourself?
Much the same. My wife and I took a really exciting drive the other day just to get out of the garage. I mean, the cars just sit there, gee, which car did we take last? And you kind of think about, we should really run them more than once a month. I don't think I've put gas in any of the cars in over a month. But it's fun. It's fun to do that. It's what's interesting to me, Mike, is you still see people roaming around and acting as if there's no such thing as a pandemic going on, and they're not taking precautions. So you see people, in groups sitting outside, and unfortunately, you see the instances of COVID-19 going up in South Carolina, North Carolina, Texas, and all over the place. So we're still not out of the woods, and it's just a crazy, crazy time.
Yeah, a lot of unknowns, and the wear of just the discipline of doing this. But also, it's also nice to see we've got some walking trails in my neighborhood, and it's nice to see that just the manners of, hey, I know if I'm walking by you, I have to maneuver a certain way. And we've got several dogs on the track that I go, so it's always interesting to see how the dogs react. They have no clue this COVID thing's going on.
It's a dog's life.
Absolutely. So with that, hey, being in sales and launching a new startup here the last couple of weeks, been super busy with that professionally. But man, it sounds like you've been cold calling on this Richard Walker guy for a while. I mean, how many times you got to call this guy to get him on the show?
Oh, he's a challenge. He's a challenge. But we are just absolutely thrilled to have Richard Walker, CEO of York Enterprise Solutions, on the show. And as I mentioned at the outset, Richard and I have known each other for more than a decade now. I know I've been in the Charlotte region coming up on 6 years, so I know it's got to be way more than that I've known Richard. Richard's a legend in the Minneapolis, Chicago area. He's a guy that I've always looked up to as a mentor to so many IT professionals in the cities that his company lives in. And I was fortunate to meet Richard so long ago, and has been, something that I finally referred to Richard and his organization, Think IT Association here. You've heard me talk about it, Chief. And what's cool about Richard is his company, their mission is to, always have a positive impact on the lives, the careers, the future of IT professionals in the communities they serve. And, a lot of times companies have these mission statements, Richard, and they're kind of just, printed on a poster, but they don't really live it. And in your case, you do. And you founded an organization called Think IT, and it's got well over 4,000 members now across a bunch of different groups. So the link to leadership, the barriers to entry. How in the world, Richard, did you find a way to get 4,000 people to stay involved in that thing for over a decade now?
Oh, that's a great question, Joe. Before I answer that, I want to go back to something you just talked about a little bit, because we're in a crazy time now. It'll be interesting to look back at these interviews that you're doing now. And we're in a very unique situation, given that we're actually right in the middle of a pandemic. My son turned me on to this show called Explained on Netflix. Have you seen it?
I have not.
It's brilliant. It's well worth looking up, because they're like 30-minute clips on things that they explain. And one of them is on pandemic. And it's incredible because this show was recorded in 2019 before the pandemic kicked in. So if you go back and you watch that and you look at the predictions, Bill Gates is in it, and he talks numerous times. And the last thing he says is absolutely profound. And I'm not going to tell you what he said, because I'm going to get you intrigued to go watch that thing, because it really is incredible, the predictions that they made. And it's almost like they knew it was coming. So I would go back and I would watch that. So, but to answer your question, Joe, Think IT, if I can answer that, if you can bear with me, I'll answer that from a high level standpoint. So Think IT is one of 4 services of York Solutions. And I'll talk about how it came about to start with, and then I'll answer your question specifically if you don't mind. So the Think IT Association, I wish I could tell you it was a planned event. It was a planned service of York that it was going to make a big difference. It wasn't. It was a fluke, and I'll tell you why it was a fluke and how it came about. When the market crashed in 2008, 2009, as you well know, a lot of people lost their jobs, and a lot of IT executives lost their jobs. And we had no business because nobody wanted IT contractors. Our core business is to build teams of IT professionals for our clients, and nobody wanted them. In fact, it's quite the opposite. We had a lot of people let go, like a lot of our competition did. So it was summertime, fortunately. So what do? Well, naturally, I started a golf networking event, and I put a group of people together, and a lot of people from the IT world, because they had time on their hands, joined this group, and then I mixed and matched people and strategically partnered up IT executives with one another. And then good things started to happen as the world started to come back. A few people started to land jobs, and then because of the help I'd given them, and some informal advice, if you will, doors started to open up for our core services. So I thought, oh, well, this is a good thing. Winter came around, as you well know, in Minnesota in wintertime, there's no golf, and unless you've got a golf simulator in your office, which we fortunately happen to have. But there's just no. So what did we do? It was one of our junior guys in the company said, well, let's take that same concept and let's create a collaboration group, because there's a lot of people in the IT world that are not golfers, and maybe we can help them. And I said, well, that's a crazy idea, but I don't have a better one. Let's try it. And so it started like that. And the first meeting that we had, it was amazing. It was only about 15, 20 people that came to it. And these were all IT leaders in transition. And a couple of things dawned on me and slapped me in the face in that very first meeting. These are highly intelligent people, very accomplished in the profession, but they have no idea how to network. They don't know what self-branding is, what's LinkedIn. If they had a profile, basically only had their name, and some didn't even have a photo. So I realized there's a lot of help that we can give people here to help them re-enter the workforce as things get back to normal. So we took that concept to start with, and it really was meant and designed for the first year was for IT professionals in transition. And then we realized after a year, we're onto something here. We can really make a significant difference and really help people with a side of their skill set that they don't realize. Most of them didn't realize just how important it was. And so we changed the branding to professional development. We kept the one group that was specifically for people in transition, but then we wanted to work with people and help them that weren't necessarily looking. But there again, the MO of most IT executives is they're always looking, whether it's internally or whether it's externally. They're always looking to move up with their career. And so we created some branding around that, and it started to get some traction. And then I got some really good advice from people like yourself and other IT executives with what not to do, because networking and collaboration, as I was talking with you before, Joe, it's nothing new. They've been going, these groups have been going for hundreds of years. The Irish first came over, got together, got a few pints of Guinness, and there's your first collaboration group. And then they did it again the next night, and the next night, and the next night. And then Jameson came in. So collaboration groups are not new, but there's a reason why most of them, they get going and they fizzle. And I didn't want that to happen. So the first thing we did is created a group within York that was focused completely 100% on just that, not sales, because what we wanted to do is provide a service to the IT community that wasn't a revenue generator for York, but did make a true difference in people's careers. And one of the reasons I was told by an IT executive that IT executive will come to the first one, but they won't go back to the second one, is if somebody's in there selling something and their phone starts blowing up on Monday morning after a Friday meeting with somebody trying to pitch something, and they don't come back. That was one piece of advice I was given, and we kept to that. The second piece of advice I was given is make sure you have the relevant people in these groups. And if you've got a group that you're bringing CIOs together, don't invite Pascal programmers, because the Pascal programmers have a very different skill set. They think very differently, and your CIOs won't come back. So we ended up creating 7 different specific groups for different components of the IT world and different segments of the IT world. We've continued to run each group separately until now, until this pandemic kicked in. And now what we've done with the Zoom world and with how communication has changed. We've had these virtual events for the last 3 months, and they've been incredible. They've been incredibly well attended, and the feedback that we've received has been fantastic. But I think really the key answer to your question, Joe, is authenticity. It's got to be transparent and authentic.
Right.
It cannot be designed for pure business purposes for us to sell our core services. I'm a big believer in, if you provide true value, good things happen naturally. And that's exactly what's happened for our business. We've been able to create true value in the community by helping the individuals that come in as members, because people have different needs, and the needs change as their career changes, and we change with them. So you mentioned Link to Leadership. Our Barriers to Entry program is a fantastic program that we can get into a little bit later if you want to as well. But the Link to Leadership program was created by the IT executive community. You were involved in the early days to help create that program. And that program was designed for people that just entering leadership from the IT technical world. And we all know to be successful in a leadership role, it's a very different skill set than being a Pascal programmer. So we created a program around that, 6-month-long program, 6 sessions. But the great thing about that program and the uniqueness of it is IT executives created it, but they also teach it. It's real.
Yeah.
It's not fictional, read a book and then, try and learn from the theory. It's real hands-on learning. So that program has continued to expand and grow. Now that's one of 2 programs that we do charge for, but every penny of profit that we make from that goes back to Genesis Works, and we can talk about Genesis Works a little bit later as well. So that's a long answer to your question, Joe. But
yeah,
the other part of it as well is I'm very passionate about it. I'm very passionate about coaching and teaching and helping people with their careers in any way, shape, or form that I can. And I think that passion resonates within the board of advisors, within everybody that's involved. I don't know whether you've seen that clip with the what's it called now, the lone dancer, the crazy, I think the guy must be in California smoking something funny because he takes his shirt off and starts dancing on the hillside. Have you seen that clip?
I have, yeah.
Yeah, and then one guy comes and joins him. And then before you know it, another 10 come in, and then you've got a massive movement, and before you know it, nobody knew who the first guy was. So it's a similar kind. I was the lone nut. That's it. I was the lone nut. Then I had a couple of first followers, and then boom, this thing exploded. And now, now you've got a movement. So I would call Think IT a true movement, and it has positively impacted many lives. And people talk. Yeah. And they refer other people in because it's authentic, it's real, and it's genuine. So again, long answer to your question.
Well, you said something that really resonates with me, and it's the authenticity aspect of it, Richard. And I still have lifelong friends that I met through Think IT that I still keep in touch with, Mike Larson and a whole bunch of other guys, and men and women that, and that's the thing too, is it's a melting pot of IT leaders in that community. It's not just one homogenous group. And I think what's interesting too is I was CIO at Red Wing Shoes at the time, and that was 40 miles from civilization, I used to say. And the meetings for Think IT were 40 miles the opposite way. So on those Friday mornings, I'd scoot up to the meetings at 7:30 in the morning, have the session, and then I drive 80 miles to Red Wing. And I didn't think once about whether that was worth my time or not, because it absolutely was. And the part about it I loved is that you had this rule where if a CIO was going to lead a discussion, they were limited to like 2 slides to introduce the topic, and then then discussion ensued. And that was so beautiful because you got people to talk. Now, obviously, you always had 1 or 2 people who like to, time of possession, was in their favor, but overall it was, you had to make them stop. I mean, you and I know who a few of those are. One thing I wanted to ask you, Richard, is your accent is a little different than mine.
You're from Arkansas.
Yeah. Where are you from? In
Southern Arkansas.
How the hell did you end up in the United States?
That's about a 4-hour question over a dozen pints of Guinness, but I'll
We've got time
for you. Yeah, we have time. I grew up in a very small town in northern England called Settle, like Seattle without the A. And I had a very, very fortunate upbringing in many ways, and a very, very different one than the vast majority of people that I work with. And I'll give you the kind of the high level. 2,000 people, more sheep than people in my hometown. This beautiful little town in the bottom of a valley.
Do you get back there?
Say again?
You get back there now and then?
Oh yeah, I get back there every year. I was back there 3 times. My parents are still there. My sister's still there. And so I'm extended family still there. And I'd love to take my family over there. And the very rewarding thing for me is my family loves to be over there. And when the cousins get together, they're right back where they left off last time. And we were back there for my father's 80th birthday last year, and we had an unbelievable time. I mean, we hardly slept. And I think the stock of Jameson went through the roof while we were there. We just had such an unbelievable time. So I do get back there on a regular basis. But, as I go back, as I get older and I reflect, I realize how fortunate that I was in many, many ways. The town I grew up in, just 2,000 people. And the expectation was when you leave school at 16, which I did, and it's not dropping out, you leave. It's only the highly intelligent ones that go into college, which I was not one of. I was not an academic at all. You either go into one of the factories, which my father worked in for over 40 years. You go into farming, which is my whole background, or you go into the trades. And I had no idea what I wanted to do. And actually, my mother set me up with a meeting with a local construction company. And I remember the interview that I had. He said, "So what do you want to do?" I said, "Oh, I don't know." He said, "Do you like to work inside or outside?" I said, "Well, I think outside." He said, "Okay, you're going to be a bricklayer." I said, "Okay, sounds good." I mean, that was it. I went to technical school to learn how to lay bricks. And for the first 6 years of my working life, I worked on the building sites, and it's hard work, especially in the lousy English weather. And that was what I was supposed to do. That's what my society that I was in, the culture I was in, said I was supposed to do. And as I got into this, I realized more and more, this is not where I want to be for the rest of my life. I want to do something different. I want to kind of break this mold. I had no idea how to do that. And I joined the youth service about 4 years in, working weekends and evenings, working with kids. And it changed my life in a lot of different ways. And through the youth service, I was presented with an opportunity. I was an athlete. I played a lot of different sports, golf being one of them, as you well know, Joe. I think the last time we played was over at Troy Burn. I remember that.
I remember.
So I was given an opportunity. I was approached by one of the senior leaders to come over to America and teach golf on a summer camp. And I snapped his hand off just because I wanted to do something different. Coming to America, you've seen the old movie. I mean, that was kind of like me in my English version of Coming to America. I was like the Mike, I mean, I go back and think about I wish I could actually shadow myself at the time. I'll give you a quick example of how clueless, truly clueless I was. So I joined this organization called Camp America that brought Europeans over. And I'm not European, by the way. I'm a pompous Englishman. There's a big difference.
Oh, I know. Don't call an Englishman a European.
Right, absolutely. So I came over, and most of the people I was with, there's a lot of side stories here, but most of the people I was with, they were going to different summer camps across the States, and they knew where they were going. I applied late, so I didn't know where I was going. So I landed in New York, felt like I was on the moon. I was the English version of Crocodile Dundee. And I even have a picture of me sat on a policewoman's horse. I said, "Hey, can I jump on you?" She let me get on her horse and took a picture with me. I mean, that's crazy. I've got all the pictures to prove my halfway true story.
What knife did you have on you at that time?
Yeah, you call it a knife? No, that's about the only thing I didn't have, Mike, was a big knife. That's kind of
a good thing. We probably be talking right now if that probably happened, right? So.
I would literally talk to people walking down, the 42nd Street. "Hey, how you doing?" And they look at me like, "You're from the moon?" So
yeah, like Coming to America, Eddie Murphy and
exactly. It was kind of like that. I mean, I wasn't coming to find my wife. Now I did find my wife the year after when I came. That's another long story. But I remember calling my parents saying I landed safe and sound, and I was talking to my father, and this is how the phone conversation went. And I remember like it was yesterday. My dad said, "So a letter came for you while you're in transition, you're marrying in the air." And I said, "Oh, what was it from?" "It's from Camp America." And they go, "Let me read it to you. Congratulations, Richard. You're going to be teaching golf on a summer camp called Greenwood's Camp for Boys in Decatur, Michigan." I said, "Michigan? I've never heard of Michigan, Dad, have you?" He said, "Well, there's something about a lake there." I said, "All right." So I get on a train, go and end up in Kalamazoo, get picked up and get taken out to the camp. And the camp owner shows me around, and I thank him profusely for the opportunity that he gave me. And he's on this lake, this 3-mile beautiful lake surrounded by trees. And I said, I have to tell you, I've heard about this Lake Michigan, and Lake Michigan's just beautiful. It's this pond that he was on. And so he
Kalamazoo's a little bit inland. Yeah, that's right.
But he burst out laughing. What are you laughing at? I said, let me show you. So he took me back to his office. He got his big map out. He said, you see this big body of water? That's Lake Michigan. You see that dot? That's my lake. I couldn't comprehend. First day off, we went to this place called South Haven. Beautiful place. And I'm on the ocean. And I'm thinking, where the hell are we? This makes no sense. We're not on an ocean. I'd never heard of the Great Lakes. About the only thing I'd heard of about America when I first came over in 1988 was there's a big hole in the ground in Arizona called the Grand Canyon, and then Fonzie from the Happy Days. That was about it. I didn't know anything. So, I mean, I was as green could be, but it changed my life. It really did, because I worked on the summer camp for 8 weeks, and then I rode the coattails of an Australian lad. There's only 2 foreigners on camp, me and this Australian lad, and he was exact opposite to me. He was very well planned, very well organized, intelligent. I rode his coattails. He got a Greyhound bus pass, 30 days unlimited. You want to hear this? See if I can remember it. So I followed him. He was planned with where he wanted to go. So we started in Michigan, went to Iowa, Dallas, Grand Canyon, LA, San Francisco, Seattle, Nebraska to Lafayette, Indiana to Purdue to Niagara Falls, back to Shickley, Nebraska for a party, New York, in 30 days by Greyhound. What a nightmare.
And you paid for that?
Paid for that. $299.
Wow.
$299 back then. So it's a long answer to your question, Joe, but that changed my life, because when I went back in September of 1988, I saw my hometown in a completely different light. This place is absolutely spectacular, but it's temporary. I knew it wasn't going to do it for me, but I didn't know how I was going to do it. But I went back I got my old job back, completely different attitude. People could not understand why I was so happy, because I knew it was temporary. People that are my age now, in their mid-50s, broken backs and not happy. Well, I was happy, and they didn't know why, and I couldn't tell them. So there's a lot that happened that, I mean, I came over here in 94, permanently got married, so there's a long story in between there with how I ended up being here permanently. But that was the catalyst for being here. And at the time, you know, I hadn't gone to college, but I remember, you want me to tell you how that ended up happening? I'll kind of continue with the story. Yeah. And you no doubt got other questions, but I went to meet a career counselor. There wasn't one in my hometown; it was too small, so I had to go to the bigger town to meet with this lady. And she said, "Well, what do you want to do?" I said, "Well, I know if I really want to get out of here and do something, I'm going to need to go to college, but I don't have the academic qualifications." So she said, "Okay, well, let's make that work." I went to night school for a year to even apply to go to college. And I got in, and I spent 4 years doing a physical education teaching degree. I always wanted to be a teacher. From the age of 23 to 27, 1990 to 1994, I did a PE degree. And every summer I would come back here. Ended up working in Florida in a summer camp, ran a summer camp down there. Ended up meeting my now wife down in Philadelphia. Actually, I was in Philadelphia working. We met in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which is another long story. And she came over with me for a couple of years and lived in England with me when I finished my degree. Then we came over in August of 1994. And I had this piece of paper, this physical education teaching degree that I really wanted. But I was distraught because they wouldn't recognize it, because it was a degree that I got from England and I couldn't get a job. So then what do? I applied for a little ad in the paper, a little tiny ad. You know, back then there was no internet and no, you know, easy access to apply for jobs. So I called this number on this thing, and I'll tell you what it said. It said, "Are you competitive? Do you like to work with people? Are you not scared of the phone? Basic IT skills." And I remember saying to my wife at the time, "What's IT stand for again?" It was for an IT recruiter position, and I had no idea what that meant. But it was a smaller company in St. Louis, Missouri, where my wife's family was at the time. And the CEO of the company must have seen something, and he gave me a shot. And to start with, I didn't like it. I was like a duck out of water. I mean, going from bricklaying to, you know, being outside and wanting to be a PE teacher. Now I'm in a suit. I had to go and buy a couple of suits. I'm in an office on the phone. I didn't like it. But then as I adjusted and as I started to get comfortable, I didn't realize that I was doing pretty well. And I was just doing as I was told, and I was learning, and I started to be successful. And that was kind of the start of it. I've done a lot of talking now, and I'm sure you've got some
How
specific
did
questions to
bricklaying,
ask.
how did that shape your attitude about work and that sort of thing? How did that work?
You know, it's a good question, Joe. I think a couple of things. You know, it's something I learned from. I've been part of being very fortunate is what I learned from my parents and what I learned from my mother. My mother's story is incredible. She left Italy when she was 8. I'm half Italian, which should tell you a lot. I've got the English side being beaten up by the Italian side all day long. My mother left Italy when she was 18 from the farm, the most basic of farms, no running water. At the age of 18, in search of a better life, and didn't even know, couldn't read and write, didn't even know other countries spoke different languages. And when she got to the border in Germany, and these people are, you know, eins, zwei, drei, vier, and because all they do is count in Germany. You know, how she didn't turn around and run, I'll never know. But she didn't. I mean, that grit and perseverance to get what she wanted, she fought through it, and she created a life for herself. I mean, unbelievable story. And I need to learn more about that when I go back. And from my father, just pure work ethic. Pure work ethic. You work hard, and there's just no substitute for that. And you know, and I think a lot of it is genetic. I can't remember him missing a day of work in his life. And I'll tell you one little story. I'm learning a lot from my parents. One of the things I learned from my father, I remember him asking me when I was a very little boy, he's probably 7 or 8, do you think other people are better than you? I said, well, of course they are, Dad. He said, no, they're not. They might have better skills than you, but they're not better than you, because if you think other people are better than you, it implies that you think you're better than others, and you're not. We're just people. You know, respect people's talents, but we're just people. And that's actually one of our core values in the company now is respect. And, you know, and I think since that day, and people will tell you that I treat everybody with the same disrespect. Everybody. There's a Freudian slip in there somewhere, but every single person. So I believe what I learned on the building site was just hard work. And you know, in days when you just didn't want to be there, you need to be there because you need to work hard. You need to pull your weight, and working with different people is you know, I remember my interview, I was asked, well, you've got a kind of a crazy background. You know, why do you think you're going to fit into this business? And I said, well, I might not, but what I've learned is how to work with people. And now at that time, I haven't worked with executives. I didn't even know any executives. But to me, the game that we're in, technology is secondary. I know that might sound a bit crazy. It's about people. Mm-hmm. It's about trying to understand what challenges they have. And it's about helping them with the skills that you have, overcome obstacles and meet their goals. It's about truly understanding what makes people tick. And technology comes along with that. Technology, there's all kinds of technologies out there and they're all good, but it's truly about people. So I don't know whether that really answered your question, Joe, but it would seem very strange. Okay, you came from, you're a bricklayer and now you're the CEO of an IT services company. How are those two go together? So it's a fair question.
Yeah. There is a link there for sure, and you know, I think you're thinking around it's a people first business. It resonates with me, and you know, the writings that you read about the fourth industrial revolution, yes, technology is accelerating, and you know, there's digital transformation, but I like what Klaus Schwab, who is the founder of the World Economic Forum, what he says about the fourth industrial revolution, and he says it's about technology, but it's technology built by people for people. It's about people. And I think this industrial revolution that we're in right now is while it's scary in some respects, I think people are coming back around to the idea that there's more to life than just making money. And it's, if you do well in the community and you do well with people and you lift their spirits, you know, you're actually making a positive contribution. Could you talk a little bit about, some of the charities that you're working with? Genesis Works in particular is one that I know you have a tremendous amount of passion around. And I had some experience with that just before I left the Twin City area. Talk a little bit about that, if you would.
Yeah, certainly. And I'll tell you how I got involved. So our good friend, Tim Toole, he introduced me to Genesis Works, probably close to 10 years ago now. And I met with the then executive director, Jeff Tollison, who's a wonderful, inspirational man who started the Twin Cities chapter and did an unbelievable job. And I fell in love with the organization in about 10 seconds flat. And when I was interviewed to be on the board there, I was asked why by a former board member. And I didn't lie to him, but I wasn't really fully truthful with my answer. And I'll tell you why. And I don't mind admitting it now. I told him, well, it's a great organization and it helps people, and just a generic answer. Well, the truth of the matter is, I would not be sat here talking with you guys now if I hadn't been given a tremendous amount of help and support. And I wish I could go back to some of those people that gave me that, because I didn't know at the time just how impactful they were going to be in my life. You just don't know when you're young, and you no technology back then, so tracking them down has been very difficult. I've been able to track a couple down, but I haven't. And some, let's face it, the truth of the matter is, some people start from behind. Now, you can still do well if you get the right breaks, you meet the right people. But where I grew up was very different. The expectation was I wasn't going to go to college. I wasn't going to have a career in business. But I do. But it was because of the people that got me on the right track and truly helped me. So when this came up, it was almost like a calling, if you will. I need to be involved, and I need to do wherever I can to give back and help people in a similar situation. Now, the people that we work with in Genesis Works, they're in a far, far different and a much more difficult situation than I was ever in, because Genesis Works truly is about helping people in the inner cities, the socioeconomic community that does start from behind. I mean, especially now in light of the George Floyd murder, it's even more apparent that the society needs to do something different, not just talk, but do something different. So Genesis Works, for the people that watch this that don't know who they are and what they do, they provide opportunities, internships for people of color and for people that really are starting from behind to get on a different track altogether. And in their senior year of high school, complete an internship with a major corporation, half in high school, half in the internship, to get them on the right track. And then there's a tremendous amount of support. And over 90% of these students then go on to further education, and most of them to a 4-year degree. So it really helps them get on the right track. And now there's a big filter system. It's not for everybody. These kids have to have the grit, the determination, the work ethic to make it happen. This program's been around for a long time now, 5 different cities. I'm obviously heavily involved in the Minnesota chapter. And I've had the good fortune, and I do mean it when I say that, of working with a lot of these, young people, and the fire and the passion that they have, because they can see a completely different life for themselves. Every single one of them is the first person from their family that's going to go to college, that's going to have this life, and the impact it has on their family is incredible. And think about how their family tree then changes, because they're likely to meet somebody in college. And when I met my wife, it was a matter of, it wasn't even going to be a matter of would our kids go to college, it would be a matter of where they would go, because I'm married into a situation where that was the expectation. My expectation was very different. So it's a wonderful organization that it's truly, truly life-changing. And so we have a number of different things that we do to support the organization. I'm proud to say that to date we've raised over $600,000 in pure revenue. But it's not just the money that we donate, it's the things that we do as an organization, as a community, because the community, every single Think IT meeting that we have, George, we have somebody from Genesis Works is always in that meeting, and I always talk about it, because one person can't have a massive impact, but a lot of people can have a massive impact. So that's the main thing that we're focused on. The other thing is our barriers to entry program, and I love that program as well. This was not my idea, but as soon as somebody mentioned it to me, I ran with it, and I socialized it with a few senior people, and they said, yes, sounds like a great program. And this program is designed really for 2 primary categories of people to help them re-enter the workforce. The people that have either taken time off to raise families, and now they can't get back in because they're in a pile of resumes with a big gap on their resume, so nobody's interested. And veterans, the chairman of the board of York Solutions, my good friend and business partner Bill Carr, was a veteran in Vietnam. So we created a program where we bring them in and we put them through boot camp training and we get them back to the workforce. And that again is very rewarding. And when we always have our graduations with the training, there's tears everywhere because, I'll give you a quick example. One young lady, she worked for Deloitte 4 years at a college, great job. Then spent 15 years trying to raising a family. She spent 2 years trying to get back into the workforce. Couldn't get back in, nobody would bring her in because she had too big of a gap. We wrote her in, boot camp, back into the workforce. We don't pay much, we don't charge much. It's just a break even. And then she took off because she hasn't forgotten those skills. It might be a bit rusty. And I would also argue in the 15 years that she spent at home running her household, she's going to gain a lot more skills that are applicable in the professional world. Yeah. So that story is just one of many that we've been able to make a difference, which again goes back to our mission. And you mentioned our mission. I appreciate you doing that. But our mission's more than just a positive impact in the IT world. It's impacting the lives of everybody that crosses our path. Whether it's, and I joked earlier that we have a golf simulator in the office, and we have a fun part where we have a pool table and a shuffleboard and an adult beverage stand. My HR department tells me that I can't call it a bar, but it's an adult beverage stand. And we don't charge a penny. We have all kinds of events there, and people bring in their families, and bachelor parties and birthday parties and client events, and when people leave there, they're better for it. And we don't make a penny on that, and I don't care because it's not always about that. Yes, we're in business to make money. We have services, core services that I'm proud of as well, but I'm more proud of the things that we do within the community that's not revenue generating, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's that whole people, purpose, planet mindset that you have, that conscious leadership mindset, and profits are just a natural consequence of that. And I remember going to a Genesis Works annual dinner, and they're so impactful, Mike. You see these kids, these high school kids. I remember one young lady told a story about months prior to her getting through this program and getting accepted into college. She and her mom lived in their car on the street. And so this program actually lifted them out of that situation. And she went on, I think, years later to get a degree. I don't know if it was in IT or not, because they don't always necessarily go through and get a degree in IT, but it gives them the realization and the hope that they can do something more than just be a victim of their circumstances. And I think that's what really, kind of resonates with me. And there's so many stories like that, Richard. I'm sure you've got a bunch of them.
Hundreds of them.
Yeah. And that's the thing about, I think, what you've done in the communities that you served is that you are more than just IT. You're all about people and community. And I think the world needs a lot more of that. But I know that you've been around IT people a lot, and you've got some really strong skills in terms of powers of observation. I'd love to, for our IT crowd out there, I'm just wondering, from your standpoint, what's one of the biggest mistakes IT professionals make?
Oh, then that's a really good question. I'm going to answer that in a strange way. I know that's a shocker. But again, things I've learned from my parents, and another thing I learned from my father is the power of lateral thinking. And I'll give you a quick example. It's going to sound like a very strange example, but I remember my parents were over a number of years ago when kids were young. Billy, our son, was probably only 2, maybe 3, something like that. And our next door neighbor, really most brilliant man that I know, trauma surgeon, digs bullets out of people's heads for a living, brilliant. And my father was kind of having a conversation with him, and the kids running around. And he said, "Okay, Steve, all right, I want you to answer this question because most people get it wrong. What's the correct answer? Is it the yolk of an egg is white or the yolk of an egg are white? What's the answer to that?" Well, I'll answer for you.
I'm going to defer to the chief over here for that one.
I'd say is white, but it's probably wrong. So
well, and that's what he said. This is a brilliant man. And my son, 2-year-old, ran past and said, "Well, Dad, isn't the yolk of an egg yellow?" So my point being that I know it's funny. My point being, couple of things there. Influence. So my dad stressed he was influencing our next door neighbor, and he was looking at it from a very linear standpoint. Well, kids don't look at things linear. They just, they hear things differently than we do. And I think that's part of the answer to your question is I think one of the biggest mistakes that well, not just IT people, but adults in general, we tend to look at things just at face value. And one of the things I learned growing up is sometimes the face value is correct, but you've always got to look at things from a big picture standpoint. How does this fit into the big picture? And one of the challenges, Joe, you've heard me mention this many times in our Think IT meetings over the years. I'll throw in a couple of curveball questions to the IT executives, and I'll say, so help me understand, how does that help the company generate revenue? How does it help the bottom line? How does it help make the company more secure? And then sometimes you get this kind of deer in the headlights response. I think there's a couple of mistakes that a lot of IT professionals make. And one of them is not understanding how their role impacts the big picture of the company. They look at just their role, that's it. And they feel that their job is just to do their role. Well, it isn't. It's to understand how your role impacts others around you and how you can positively impact their work day. I think that's one of the things that they do. And I think as people climb up the ladder, the other mistake that people make is people's value changes. As you go up the chain, that your value changes. And it's no longer, I shouldn't say no longer, but it's less about what's the right software to choose. And it's more about truly helping the business of IT and what that really means to a company, and really understanding how IT fits into the big picture. Because we always talk about IT and the business, and this is an ongoing argument that we have. Is IT separate to the business? Is it part of the business? And that's an ongoing question that gets asked, Joe, that we've talked about for years. Mm-hmm. And I think the biggest mistake that IT executives and IT professionals in general make is not truly understanding where IT fits into a business. Does that make sense?
It certainly does. One of the individuals that you introduced Think IT members to is a guy, the late David Hussman. And you remember David had this, he looked like the Big Lebowski chief, long hair, and he was an agile expert. He hated being called that. And he had this thing, he said, he called it dude's law. So, that's what people call him, the dude. But he says that value is equal to why you do something divided by how you do it. And I use that same metaphor over and over. And I actually talked to David, passed away a few years ago from a bout with cancer, unfortunately. And I did reach out to his wife and talk to her probably about a year ago, Richard. And I told her that I was still using his dude's law concept. But and so that's just the power of that network, Richard. As we kind of look towards wrapping up today's conversation, which the time has gone by incredibly quickly, we're going to have you back on again, Richard.
Love to.
One of the things I'd like to ask you about, well, first, are you still wearing crazy socks?
Of course, these are going to be, these aren't really crazy. These are just my golf socks I'm going to be wearing today. And
all right.
Right now, you can't see because I can't get my leg high enough. I'm sockless at the moment, but I will have my hot pink ones on today. But yes, that's
all right, good. I figured as much. And do you still call yourself the chief golf officer?
Well, no, you're making me sad now, Joe, because that was my favorite title. And I was told when I took over as the CEO of the company 3 years ago, if you want to be taken seriously, you can't be the chief golf officer. You need to be the CEO, which I've never liked that because I don't like titles. But I'm thinking about changing it back because that's more me. Because I do like to go and play golf. We haven't talked about golf at all, but golf changed my life. It was the reason I came over in the first place. And go back to, you're talking about humanitarianism. The person I play more golf with than anybody is 93 years young. Incredible man. And I play with him. I played with him yesterday. I play with him 3-4 times a week. And the people that have been able to introduce him to, they just absolutely love him because of he hasn't lost anything upstairs. He's been a great business advisor to me and just a life coach without knowing it. And to have my son play with him yesterday as well, it's just fantastic. And I'm running out now to go and play with a couple of friends. And I say they're friends, they are friends, also clients, but they're friends first. I've known these guys for 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
So it's about people again.
Yeah, well, one of the more fun things that you and I got to do together when I announced my departure from Red Wing, you and I combed the city trying to find a candidate to take my spot, and that was a bittersweet scenario. But we did find somebody, and unfortunately, that somebody did then ultimately leave. But we know who that is. He's a good guy. But as we close out, Richard, anything you want to talk about or plug as we close out today's session? And by the way, we will definitely have you back on again.
Do I want to plug anything? There's nothing that I want to really plug from a York business standpoint. I will say that one of the programs that we're in the process of developing, you see it's my backdrop right now, is our Amazing Leadership Program, and that the way the name came about. So we're partnering with a company called Disruptive Element, who are fantastic. This is their business, coaching, executive coaching. We were trying to find a name for this program, because this program is basically our Link to Leadership on steroids program. It's really designed for the most senior executives within IT that want to progress with a career, whatever that means to them. And we all know the skills to be successful at that level. Again, the people that I've worked with over the years, when they get to that level, they don't know what they don't know. And how many times have you heard people say, including yourself, it's lonely at the top when you do reach the top, because the skills to be successful are very, very different than just in a regular leadership role. So this program is designed around that, and it's going to be a one of a kind, because the speakers that we have in this are second to none. CFO, CEO, COO, I mean, big time people that are willing to give their time back to truly help people. Help them understand what they don't know, and what they need to work on to be successful. Because one word that we haven't really said the word, but we've talked about it in many different ways and shapes and forms. It's about relationships.
Yeah,
it's truly about relationships. Now everybody knows that. That's nothing new. But what can you do to foster real relationships, deep, authentic relationships, and develop that trust? And so, if I was to give one piece of advice to anybody, but in particular IT executives that really want to further their career, I'll give you a quick story. And I have to be careful. I'm not going to share names of the company, even in case somebody watches this and they're on to me. But there are two different marks, and this is going back about 7-8 years ago now, that were vying for the same CIO job, both VPs at the same company. And I played golf with them both separately. And afterwards, one of the marks got the job, the other one didn't. And I asked the one mark why he thought he didn't get the job. And here's what he said. I didn't spend the last 2 years kissing, there's Freudian slip there, kissing the backsides of people like the other guy did. And so I asked the other mark, why do you think you got the job? He said, I spent the last 2 years forming the right relationships and building trust with the right people. So think about that for a second. At that level, at every level, it's about relationships, and it's about building trust with people. We have a saying that we use called relationship equity. And if you think about that, the more time and the more value that you can create for yourself, and the more equity you can create for yourself, the better it is. Because you said it perfectly, Joe. It's not equity in terms of now you've got to give me something back. People want to give back and work with you if you've created enough value for them.
Yep, absolutely. Again, thank you so very much for being here today, Richard. You and I have known each other a long time. I know I've been out of the city for a while. I still feel very connected to the Twin Cities, even though I live in a much more warm climate. Chief, any last comments before we close out?
No, Richard, thank you so much. Hey, if I'd say your perfect foursome. What would your perfect foursome look like and what course would you play?
Oh, great question. So I'll answer the second part of it first. So my favorite golf course on earth, my wife surprised me and took me to Hawaii for my 40th birthday 13 years ago. And we played on a golf course called Hawalalai. That's right on the Big Island. And they play I think the first Champions Tour event there every year. It would be on that golf course. Probably my ideal foursome. My son, he's the only one that really plays golf in the family, will be the first one. Second person, I could go locally here, but it would be probably Justin Rose. And I'm going to go with another Englishman as well. Tommy Fleetwood would be the other, because he grew up in Southport, England, which is not far away from me, blue collar guy. And then old Tom Morris.
Yes.
Yeah, I would love to pick the brain of somebody that played that long ago, that played with featheries and hickory shafts. And so that's a crazy foursome for you, but that would be my ideal foursome. How about you, Mike? You play?
Yeah, I play, but I need to follow Tom Morris's ball and Justin Rose's ball. So I don't it depends on how much money we've got to put on the bets. But no, it's a great sport, and it teaches its life to the fullest. I think that's why so many people play it at high levels, and why it's such a challenging sport is because it is the most humble sport that's out there. So
it is. Without a doubt. And again, it's about people. The other fellow I play a lot of golf with, unfortunately, I haven't played him yet this year because he's kind of stuck in Florida, is my old buddy Bud Chapman, who's 97 years young.
Wow.
And I had one of the highlights of my life was to be able to take my two old buddies, 97 and 93, and it's 2 years ago now, so take 2 years off those. Neither of them have been to the Masters to watch it, and I was able to take them both to watch the Masters, and it was an incredible experience for me to be there with them, to see it through their eyes. I was very fortunate; I've been there many times, but to see it through their eyes, they were like little kids on Christmas, and it was just fantastic. And that to me,
Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. It's perfect. It's perfect.
It's exactly what it was like.
You walk in there, and you're like, there's not one blade of grass that's brown. I mean, it's perfectly manicured. Just it is the perfect golf course that I've ever witnessed, and the way they run the tournament. I grew up in an area where we had annual tournaments, and it's a great one. But you go to the Masters, you're like, wow, this is the top of the shelf.
It is the epitome of operational excellence. Everything is absolutely perfect, but again, it's about the people. And the people that I've met that I keep in touch with, and the people I've been able to take good friends, and my father, my father-in-law, my son, and to have those experiences with people are unforgettable. At the end of the day, who cares how much money you've made? It doesn't matter.
You should see there's a ad in one of the golf magazines that I get, what they've done for the reporters. I mean, it is luxury. I mean, they take care. Again, like you said, they know how to take care of people. And again, they're not price gouging, $4 for a sandwich. You're right. It kind of ties up the show. So thank you so much. And we'd love to have you again.
Well, thank you very much for having me on, guys. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks for being on the Underground.
Thanks a lot.
Hit him straight.
Cheers. Well, I can't guarantee that, but I'll still have fun. Take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.